Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Okay. Canto 11, Chapter 3, Text 6. I'll go ahead and attempt to read the Sanskrit. Please forgive me in advance. Karmani karma bi kurvan sa nimitani dehabrit tat tat karma palam grenan brahmati ha sukhe taram. Translation, or actually, should we do the word for word? Let's do the word for word. Karmani, various kinds of fruitive work. Karmana by the karmanidriyas, the organs of action. Kurvan, performing. Sanimitani, which are imbued with motivating desires. Deha Brit, the proprietor of the material body. Tat tat, various. Karma palam, results of work. Grinan, accepting. Brahmati, he wanders. Iha, throughout this world. Sukha, happiness. Itaram, and otherwise. And before I continue, I'll do the Om Namo Bhagavates. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jagannarutamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nastapraya Subhateshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer the respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supreme human being, unto the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. I'd also like to offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and his sincere followers, by whose grace we have access to this transcendental wisdom. By regular attending classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Translation of text 6. Impelled by deep-rooted material desires, the embodied living entity engages his active sense organs in fruitive activities. He then experiences the results of his material actions by wandering throughout this world in so-called happiness and distress. BBT purport. The argument may be given that if a living entity were subject to the result of his previous activities, there would be no scope for free will. Once having committed a sinful action, the living entity would be bound in an endless chain of suffering, being perpetually subject to previous reactions. According to this speculation, there cannot be a just and omniscient God, since the living entity is forced to commit sinful activities by the reactions of his previous activities, which were reactions to still previous activities. Since even an ordinary gentleman will not unfairly punish an innocent person, how could there be a God witnessing the helpless suffering of the conditioned souls within this world? This foolish argument can easily be refuted by a practical example. If I purchase a ticket for an airline flight, board the plane, and commence the flight, once the plane has taken off, my decision to board the plane forces me to continue flying until the plane lands. But although I am forced to accept the reaction of this decision, on board the plane, I have many new decisions I can make. I may accept the food and drink from the stewardess or reject it. I may read a magazine or newspaper. I may sleep, walk up and down the aisle, converse with other passengers, and so on. In other words, although the general context, flying to a particular city, is forcibly imposed upon me as a reaction to my previous decision to board the plane, even within that situation, I'm constantly making new decisions and creating new reactions. For example, if I cause a disturbance on the airplane, I may be arrested when the plane lands. On the other hand, if I make friends with a businessman sitting next to me on the plane, such a contact may lead to a favorable business transaction in the future. Similarly, although the living entity is forced to accept a particular body by the laws of karma, within the human form of life, there is always scope for free will and decision making. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be considered unjust for holding the living entity in human life responsible for his previous activities, despite the living entities undergoing the reactions of his previous work. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the influence of Maya is so strong that even in a hellish condition, the proud conditioned soul thinks that he is enjoying life. So I will offer a few prayers and attempt to share something on this verse today. Om Meganatimirandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadanti Swavadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha. I'm sorry. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virjina Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So one more time, we'll read through the translation. Impelled by deep-rooted material desires, the embodied living entity engages his active sense organs in fruitive activities. He then experiences the results of his material actions by wandering throughout this world in so-called happiness and distress. So there's a few nice points to bring out here, but I guess I'll start by asking, what is so-called happiness? What is so-called happiness? It's interesting that this term, Prabhupada has very nicely popularized this idea of so-called, so-called scientists, so-called Gyani, so-called happiness. And so it's interesting when we say, so-called, it's almost like saying it's a knockoff of something. And in order for there to be a knockoff, there has to be the original thing itself. So if there's a knockoff purse, then usually it's a knockoff of something that exists. So say there is a Coach bag that's a real product, and then the knockoff would be a cheaper version by other people trying to sell it off as the real thing so they can get a higher revenue. So here he's saying this so-called happiness. In this world, if that's all we know is the knockoff, then we just understand it to be happiness. So this term so-called is challenging the entire conception of what we perceive happiness to be. Maybe we see happiness in this success or in this accolade or this ability or this quality of ours. But this translation is saying that these are actually knockoffs. But then if it's a knockoff, then what is the real happiness? Our revealed scriptures have informed us that this real happiness is in the spiritual realm, in connection with Krishna, in connection with true happiness. Happiness that's derived from the soul's connection with its conscious source. Happiness that comes from being in connection with the Ananda Shakti, the pleasure potency. So there's Sat, Chit, and Ananda, eternality, full consciousness, and bliss, Ananda. Now, in this world, we see the opposite of such qualities. Instead of Sat, instead of eternality, there's Asat, there is temporary. Everything in this relative world is temporary. Instead of Chit, full consciousness, there is limited consciousness. My eyes over time, they lose the ability to see, my senses lose the ability to taste or smell or whatever it may be. We gradually have, at all points in life, we have limited consciousness and we viscerally experience its losing of strength more and more as time progresses. And lastly, Ananda, instead of full bliss, in this world, there are the various kleshas. They are the disturbances of the mind and body. There are disturbances from other living entities, and there's disturbances from natural disasters such as earthquakes, floods, diseases, etc. And so we see that this realm is not a place of true happiness, the real, authentic happiness of lasting, joyful, fully conscious, loving exchanges in a spiritual realm. Thus, this world is full of knockoffs. And it's quite interesting because it's saying so-called happiness and distress, because one may look into the pastimes of Vrindavan and one may think, well, how is it that Mother Yashoda is in the spiritual realm, but it's describing that she is in anxiety, in distress, in trying to take care of Krishna, in trying to make sure that he is fed, making sure that he is safe. And in this way, we can see that the distress of this relative world could also be called knockoff. Because in the spiritual realm, even something that appears as distress is mixed with the Ananda, is in union with the Ananda Shakti, with the pleasure potency. Because Mother Yashoda's anxiety is in connection with Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of bliss itself, even her so-called anxiety is truly ecstatic and fully blissful. We've heard this in many classes and many revealed scriptures. And so Mother Yashoda is said to be fully immersed in the ecstasy of her anxiety, her parental love for Krishna fully manifest. And so before we continue on, there's one point that we would like to focus on today. Impelled by deep-rooted material desires, I think it's worth noting that Hari Prashad, in his Nectar of Devotion class series, speaks on how there are different levels of material desires. There are transient ones that will naturally be there throughout our life, like, oh, I'm hungry, or I'm tired, or I need to go to the restroom, etc., which are different than deeply rooted desires. I think he gives the example that with deeply rooted desires, it's something that is completely leading our trajectory of life, something that is completely immersing our consciousness, but is still ultimately material, temporary, and thus fully unsatisfying to the soul. Certainly around this time of year, there are a lot of desires, perhaps for a particular item, like I really want to get this item, I really want this thing. And we experience time and time again that once that item is received, it doesn't give the full satisfaction to the soul. This verse nicely mentions how we try to engage our active sense organs to try to enjoy these relative material items. But they may give some fleeting pleasure to the senses, but these things do not touch the heart, because the heart is the seat of the soul, and the soul can only be satisfied by things of its own quality, which is spiritual. So in the rest of this verse, it says the embodied living entity engages his active sense organs in fruitive activities. Through the eyes, we are seeing very beautiful things. Through the tongue, we are trying to taste very nice things. Through the nose, we're trying to smell nice aromas. Through the body, we are trying to touch and feel nice textures and things. And through the ears, we are trying to hear very nice sounds. So like this, we can be caught in an entire lifetime, many lifetimes of trying to find things to please these various sense organs. And then the verse says, as a result, they experience the results of their material actions. So I may want to go to a concert, so I work very hard to get the facility to go. And then I travel, so I'm working, and now I'm experiencing the results. I'm in the concert, there's music playing, I go deaf because the volume is way too high, and thus we continue in this semblance of actions and reactions. So the results of his material actions by wandering throughout this world in so-called happiness and distress. But by the grace of our acharyas, the purport nicely mentions this idea about how could it be that God just allows or lets or even gives punishments according to our reactions. But in truth, he speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavami Yuge Yuge, that he himself and his associates, his beloved associates, come into this world again and again to give us the opportunity to transcend this karma. And the purport gives this nice example about being in a plane. We have purchased this ticket. This plane is heading to a particular destination. By our karma, we are in these particular lives, forms of life. But Krishna, despite that, again and again throughout the Bhagavad Gita and other shastras, speaks about how when one takes shelter in the spiritual energy, one can transcend their karma. He can transcend these karmic reactions. And one pastime that very nicely shows how far Krishna is willing to go is explained in the 10th canto. There was a pastime of Nanda Maharaj. So I believe the scenario was that there was a day of fasting, and so they fasted all throughout the day, and then the next morning, there was a certain time when they were supposed to break their fast. But somehow or other, Nanda Maharaj needed to take the bath, so there was this conflict of when to break the fast and when to do this other part of the ritual. And we see even until today, I was hearing from Jaini Thai Prabhu that there was this, astrological scenario where it made fasting for Varahadev and fasting for Nityananda, Trayodashi, not possible at the same time. So all these kinds of things can happen sometimes. And so Nanda Maharaj goes and takes his bath, and there was a servant of Varunadev who was not fully purified yet in heart, and saw this minor transgression as very serious. He took it very seriously. And as a result, he took Nanda Maharaj down into the kingdom of Varunadev. And once Varuna came to realize that his less than fully realized servant had stolen the father of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he became filled with anxiety. And I'm guessing not the same kind of anxiety that Mother Yashoda is experiencing. He became very apprehensive, thinking the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to destroy us. So he very wisely, very smartly put Nanda Maharaj on the throne. Varunadev put Nanda Maharaj on his own throne, and they began to worship him, so that when Krishna would arrive, they would see that his father is in no trouble and is being fully and duly honored. And thus, when Krishna came to find out that his father had disappeared, he, being omniscient, knew what had taken place and personally went down to the kingdom of Varunadev to go and retrieve his father. Now, this is very fantastic. I mean, just see how wonderful Krishna is. He can do anything. He doesn't even have to go there himself. He can send any number of other people. He can send any one of his other associates. But he personally, in his own transcendental form, comes to get Nanda Maharaj and bring him back to safety. And so when he enters the kingdom of Varunadev, he is ready to do the needful. But upon seeing that his father was being duly worshipped, and naturally, when he came in, Varunadev and his associates offered their respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with great awe and reverence, Krishna was pacified. And Nanda Maharaj was stunned just seeing, how is it that my son is being worshipped by the demigods? Maybe he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead after all. And so like this, Krishna takes Nanda Maharaj back to Vrindavan. So we can understand in this instance how Krishna is willing to execute his promise, Sarvadharma parityaja mamekam sharanavraja, ahantam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishami masuchaha, that just by confiding him, giving up everything else and simply confiding in Krishna, fully surrendering our heart in love to Krishna, thus we allow him to take care of everything else. And he says, you have nothing left to fear. Do not worry. I will take care of everything. This is Krishna's promise from love. And so it's on our ends to just allow Krishna's love, to allow it, to respond to the call of love. And one might ask, how do we do this? And in the verse before that, in 1865, is given the instruction. Manmana bhavama bhakto madhijima namaskuru. That's simply by thinking about Krishna, fully observing Krishna. And we can only fully think about someone if we're fully in love with them, if we're fully immersed in deep affection for this person. Only in this way will we be able to be fully immersed in thought about them. If we absorb our mind, if we become fully devoted to them, become Krishna's bhakta, if we worship him, which means really exchanging our hearts, sharing our heart with Krishna in a very beautiful way, bhajan, where we're giving our heart to Krishna and Krishna is giving his heart to us. And thus this continuous exchange of hearts goes on until it becomes, in one sense, one heart. And then offering homage, always expressing our deep appreciation with a respectful mood as the foundation. And this way we allow Krishna. Krishna says, if you're able to do this, then you allow me to do that, to take you back to the spiritual world. And he says, I promise this because you are my very dear friend, because you are my beloved, because you are deeply important to me. And so in this pastime, Nanda Maharaj is personally saved by Krishna. And so although we may have these deeply rooted material desires, if we somehow or other, Prabhupada writes, somehow or other absorb our consciousness in Krishna, then we allow Krishna to bring us out of this Maya. Even though we may be going in one direction because of our karma, Krishna is the supreme controller. He can change everything about this material world and bring us to transcendence. And there's another pastime which illustrates just how far Krishna is willing to go, even further than what has already been stated. Normally, when we buy a plane ticket, as the purport mentioned, we are bound to go in that direction towards the city that the plane is headed in. And although we may have free will while being in the plane, we're generally bound to head to that direction. But one may argue that by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna in his most munificent form, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya, one may even say that the whole entire plane can be redirected and brought into a different direction by the potency, by the grace, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there are many pastimes illustrating this, but there is one pastime that we will speak on today from Chaitanya Charitamrita. I believe it's more actually described in Chaitanya Bhagavatam. But however, it is described that when Nimai Pandit had his own revelation of Krishna consciousness and revealed his ecstatic mood as a devotee, Gauranga Mahaprabhu comes back from Gaya and begins his Sankirtan mission. And with his most intimate associates, like Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Srivas, Gadadhar, and many others like Haridas Thakur, they would meet at Srivas's house, at the Srivas Sangam, and they would have these hyper-ecstatic kirtans, which were expressing the deepest moods of transcendental ecstasy. And now, for multiple reasons, not everybody was invited into this intimate association. The mellows that would be expressed would not be able to be understood by everyone. And thus, it would not be a favorable mix. Now, the reaction of people in general was variegated. Some people were feeling with deep humility, when will I be qualified to be able to see the dancing of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and bring him great bliss by being able to chant the holy names in his association? This is very favorable mentality. We should also develop this mentality. When will we be able to facilitate Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstasy in our own purity of heart, in our own chanting, in our own devotional practice? But there were others who became envious. And one such person was Gopal Chapel. And he became so envious that he went so far as to frame Srivas Thakur, to blaspheme him. He said, "Oh, just see all of these so-called devotees. They are just doing all kinds of grotesque rituals, and this is why they don't want us to come and see, because we are truly the high-class devotees, and thus they don't want us to see all the degrading things that they're doing at night at Srivas's house." And so he actually put all kinds of very contaminating articles in front of the house of Srivas Thakur. And now Srivas, being the representative of the pure devotee, is very exemplary in his humility. Trinadapi Svichana, Tadodasi Svaishna, Amanida Manidina, Kirtaniya Sadahari. He had full humility. Instead of saying, "Oh no, this wasn't me, I didn't do this, how could they blame me?" He goes out and he says, "Yes, just see, this is what I'm doing. Now you see the true nature of my heart, how fallen and contaminated I am. Just see." He doesn't try to defend himself. And he's not spiritually bypassing either. He's genuinely feeling this deep humility in this way. That why try to defend myself? Krishna knows But the truth is, Krishna's in my heart. He knows the truth. But being of such high quality person, no one believed Srivas Thakur when he said this. They understood that someone was being very envious and blaspheming in this way. So when it came out that Gopal Chappal had done this, he naturally suffered in pretty heavy reactions. There are very strong reactions for offending the devotees of the Lord. And so, which is why it's very strongly recommended to avoid this mad elephant offense, which will destroy the garden of our devotional flower. And here we see the reaction of Gopal Chappal, that he actually got intense diseases. He got intense leprosy, his limbs and appendages all falling off and melting, and all kinds of grotesque and foul smells emanating from his body, and became outcast from the entire society. Suffering in this way, it brought a deep sense of humility into his heart. And thus, with that deep sense of humility, he took shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Krishna in his most munificent form, his most merciful form. But as we see in many pastimes, when we upset the devotees of the Lord does not take kindly to it. And so, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed him that in spiritual loving anger, may you stay like this, he perhaps said, for hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of lifetimes. May you stay in the suffering. Now that might be really, really shocking at first, but we see later on how his mercy unfolds and how many lessons are in this pastime. Staying in the suffering condition for some time and really calling out with a deep sense of repentance. Gopal Chappal stayed in this condition for some time and met with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu another time and begged again for this mercy. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart softening, he says, I actually have no power. We've heard this in other places in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I have no power to forgive you because you have offended my devotee. You have offended Srivas Thakur. But if you get the forgiveness of Srivas, then I will be allowed to forgive you. And so with this, Gopal Chappal immediately goes to Srivas Thakur and falls at his feet, begging for mercy, begging for forgiveness. And this is the mercy, this is the nature of the Vaishnava, that they immediately forgive. Srivas took no offense whatsoever to himself. He immediately forgave Gopal Chappal. And receiving the mercy of the Vaishnava, Gopal again goes to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and falls at his feet. And in great happiness, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraces him with his mercy. And thus, as a result, Gopal Chappal's full disease was actually cured. And he received the full mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the full mercy of Sri Chaitanya. His plane, by his reactions, was heading to a lifetime of perpetual cyclical suffering, just like we are reading today in this verse, in this purport. He bought a ticket heading to a very unpleasant place. But by the grace of the devotees, who in this pastime are exhibiting a mercy even beyond Krishna in his most munificent form, it's said in the Narada Bhakti Sutras that to get this association of these devotees are extremely rare and extremely necessary. And even to get their association is only by the mercy of Krishna. And so to get the association is mercy, to get their mercy is still, again, a deeper sense of mercy, more merciful than Krishna himself. And when we have gotten such grace, we can actually avail ourselves to the topmost boon of Krishna consciousness. Not only are we changing the direction of the plane from going to a place of deep suffering, but we are heading now to the topmost transcendental location beyond our ability to conceive of. We're heading to a realm of unlimited transcendental bliss in its most raw, sweetest, and intense form. Love of Sri Vrindavan Dham. And so, like this, it behooves us, the takeaway for us today may be, how can we confide in the Lord in such a way where we can avail ourselves to this opportunity that is given to us? It doesn't matter what we've done, where we're coming from. All we have to do is avail ourselves to the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is willing to redirect the entire plane itself into the topmost destination. How can we take deeper shot? How can we confide more deeply in Krishna and his beloved associates? So with that, I will conclude today's talk. Please forgive me as your extremely insignificant aspiring servant if I've spoken anything incorrect or have not been inspiring in some way. Please forgive that. And please just take that Krishna is a very wonderful person and that he is the source of our life and our love. With that, I can turn it back to Ananda Bihari Prabhu. Ananda Bihari Prabhu to open for questions and comments. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Manohara Prabhu. Wonderful class. So you described how wrongfully accusing a devotee constitutes an offense to the devotee, that even the Lord himself will not be able to forgive you without you having to apologize to the devotee in question. And that devotee, Srivas Thakur, took no offense. So who sent the reactions then? Who sent that leprosy? If the devotee wasn't offended, and is the Lord really so vengeful? That's the first question. And the second question is, if we are the one who is being wrongfully accused for whatever reason, should we demand forgiveness based on this pastime? Should we quote, "Oh, look, that devotee took no offense. Why are you so offended? I should be immediately forgiven." Can we demand that from others, or that only applies inwardly, that we should take no offense and forgive others easily? Those are the questions. Thank you.
Very wonderful questions. And I should very humbly admit that I'm not qualified to speak on this to full extent, but as an attempt to serve, I can try to offer some few thoughts. First off, it is extremely important for us to recognize that these are the pastimes of pure devotees in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. They're for us to be inspired by and to try to walk in the footsteps of. But we should understand that we're not at that level. If something happens like this to me, I'm not at the level of Srivas Thakur to be unfazed. But that's why the pastime is so important, because it's showing what it looks like for someone who is at that level, what their heart is like. So in our own application, we should fly like a bird trying to reach the end of the sky. It may not be able to reach, but we should try our sincere best. And so, if to try to hone in on the question, if we are, you were saying, like, if we were accused, right? Like if we were accused of something, yeah, then we could try our best to be humble. There's also this verse, that if we're sincerely confiding in Krishna, that one of two things. Either this is an opportunity to help me confide more deeply in Krishna, because maybe I haven't confided in such a way that my karmic reactions have been dispelled. Or two, I am actually confiding in Krishna that deeply, and thus this reaction is just coming so that it can uproot some unhelpful tendency within my character. And thus, both expressions are expressions of Krishna's love, Krishna's grace, Krishna's mercy. A father may need to discipline their child for their benefit, and they do not want to. Which goes towards the other question about if Krishna is really so vengeful. It's not vengeance, it's love. And it's not easy. I mean, Krishna feels everything that we're feeling. He's in Gopal Chappal's heart, feeling his pain more viscerally than he is himself. He's in all of our hearts simultaneously, feeling our difficulties more than we are. He remembers our difficulties from millions of lives in the past, where we may have forgotten, he remembers. And he feels that pain because he is loving us to the topmost extent. So what pain Krishna must be feeling? Although he's fully transcendental and this pain registers certainly differently than how it registers for us, but still, it's revealed in the pastime with Hiranyaksha and Varahadev. When Hiranyaksha speaks harsh words, it says that they were like shafts to the heart of Varahadev, of the personality of Godhead. And the purport is described. He feels, he's a person, you know. It's not that he's, going to be somehow destroyed or undermined or that he's not Atmaram or fully transcendental. But when people come to him in a mood of love, he feels that love and reciprocates. This is written all throughout the Shastras, and our acharyas have spoken in this way. This is why we want to engage in devotional service in a favorable way, which is why it's stated in that way. But there are natural reactions to this material world. If I touch fire, it'll burn me. And so there are also subtle reactions also. And if I act cruelly and I act in a certain way, then nature will give that reaction back to me. So if I'm attracting these diseases through my disease consciousness, then I will live in that reaction. So it's perhaps Krishna Prabhu can give a deeper Shastric explanation of this, but it seems that it's also just a natural reaction of this relative world. That's get the reactions according to our behaviors.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was very satisfying. Krishnadaya Prabhu, Adokshaja Prabhu, where are you?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for that pastime with similar lines. I'm not sure how much time we have. I can understand Jiva's Thakur, remaining silent, but little bit I want to know, like, why to accept that I'm doing this? That's little bit. Can you throw more light? Like, why to accept if somebody's doing some allegation? So you can remain silent, we will not fight back, but accepting that, how do I understand that?
So and missing that last part, how he acts.
Accept, like Shiva Thakur is accepting that, yes, I am doing this Durga Puja or, so all that. So
yeah, it's inconceivable, is it not? Just see the mood of Srivas Thakur.
Yeah, you said it's there like a pure devotee said. So, I mean,
Yeah, I have some words, but the conch is about to blow, so maybe we can speak in afterglow.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Kancharashi Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Lotus feet across spiritual masters, the only way which is continuing to universal time. And balance his lotus feet with great honor. By his grace, we can cross the ocean of suffering and obtain the mercy. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Catch me the lotus feet, which fills all the eyes. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart. He is my Lord, from him ecstatic frame emanates. The Vedic scriptures sing this character. Our spiritual master, Lord of mercy, friend of the poor, Lord of justice. O Master, merciful, give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the free world. Take shelter. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Arjuna Prabhu. Looks like Arjuna Prabhu is back, which is great. There he is, Arjuna Prabhu. Hare Krishna, nice to see you. Jai. Thank you, Manohara Prabhu. Manohara Prabhu, are you staying with us for the afterglow?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Dear devotees, if you have a question or a reflection, please go ahead. Okay. Anybody?
I think first, there was a Krishna Daya Prabhu's inquiry about Srivas Thakur's mood and just kind of accepting the blasphemy, which it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, just see the mood of Srivas Thakur. I was hearing in a lecture of from His Holiness Radha Swami, and he was elaborating how sometimes we get so disturbed, that false ego can get so disturbed that, oh, this person, cut in line, and how could you do this? And we'll come to him like crying and all these about these different things. And he was saying this in a kind of lighthearted mood that, sometimes we can be very disturbed by these things. And certainly if we're disturbed on a material level, we should process that naturally, but it's helping us see from a place of humility where we're at and where Srivas Thakur the representative of that pure Shuddha Bhakta, that pure devotee is at, how these things don't influence their heart. And thus they will respond in ways that will be naturally inconceivable to us. And now the thing about that is that it's not a one size fits all, in that that pure devotee may act differently in different scenarios. For example, King Yudhishthira was of the same quality of purity, but he has a different responsibility. So if he's challenged in such a way, then he is representing the kingdom and representing Krishna in that way. So he may express that humility in a different way by actually dispelling all doubt, by actually confronting it and saying, no, this isn't how it actually is. This is the proper way that this situation has gone. So in many instances, we see that the devotees, the pure devotees, will act differently and express that humility in different ways. And in purports, Prabhupada will explain that in some, when it's just about our own self, we can take any different kind of blasphemy or ill speak or whatever. But if it's going to negatively affect the faith or negatively criticize those in association with Krishna, or negatively reflect on Krishna himself, in those instances, we can defend ourselves or defend the devotee, defend Krishna. So it will manifest differently and uniquely in different scenarios. But in this scenario, we see the beauty of Srivas Thakur's great humility and his being unaffected by the accusations of others in this scenario, according to a lot of different circumstances. But it's something to just be relished, that he is so much immersed in his love for Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that what are the ill speaks of people in general? This is nothing to me. Krishna knows the truth. He's living in my heart. So let that be pacifying enough for me. So this is the mood of Srivas in that scenario there. I hope that's okay. Okay. So if there was another question, I think Krishna Diaprabhu must have had to continue on.
Thank you very much, Manohara Prabhu. Yeah, the whole concept of forgiveness is kind of counterintuitive. In one sense, every action should bear a reaction, but and on the other hand, there's this forgiveness, right? This that overrides everything.
Forgiveness is also a tricky element because it's applied differently to the circumstance. In transcendence, forgiveness may look a certain way, and also in the relative, it may look a certain way. Especially applying for us who are aspiring or who are walking towards transcendence, we still need to do things like take care of the body, take care of our family, and take care of our responsibilities in this world. Raghunath Das Goswami was on the level where he could just have a cup of buttermilk a day. I'm not on that level, so I have to work with where I'm at. And forgiveness is also another element that we have to apply at our level. It's something that we are trying to work in connection with Krishna to have that pacification in our hearts, and that pacification even on the mental platform. But it doesn't always mean that there's not a reaction externally, in the sense that someone may hurt me in some kind of way. And in my heart, I work on forgiving them. In my heart, I work on bringing that to Krishna or to my mentors. In my heart and in my mind, I work on being okay with that. But it doesn't mean that I continue to interact with that person in the same way. Naturally, because it's a relationship is a living thing. Naturally, there will be, if needed, some like distancing from that person who's hurt me. And that's fully within each of our rights to try to test. But that doesn't mean that we don't forgive them. we forgive them. I think even it's like this. John F. Kennedy said something like, "Forgive and not for." Well, we do want to forgive and forget, but forgive, but also, being aware, being mindful, and according to the circumstance, allowing for the relationship to heal, not holding that resentment in our hearts, but still naturally may mean that there is some distance in the relationship. So there's some few bigger topic.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, common sense doesn't go anywhere. It writes along the path of bhakti. Like Srila Prabhupada would always emphasize this. Be a gentleman. Use common sense in service to Krishna. Don't be a fanatic. Don't try to act on the level you're not at. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, so that's why it's applied to circumstance. There may be circumstances where we can forgive and then the relationship can reconnect organically. And there may be scenarios where there is forgiveness, but also I might, for myself and also for the other person, might need to take some distance. So it's very circumstantial.
Yeah, some distance, some consequences, but forgiveness is there. But it's like the child. I'm sorry, I have to slap you in the butt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, something like this.
Jai, thank you.
Yeah. But then one last point towards this is that the beauty of Krishna and Krishna consciousness. I mean, I've been hearing so many pastimes lately about how, or instances lately about the soul is never like eternally damned, so to say. And there was even this one instance reading recently in one of our Acharya's books that there was a person who fell into bad association and he started doing all kinds of terrible things, like killing people and this thing and that thing. And they had wandered into an area of Vrindavan and they were like kicked out. And he had taken on a very ghastly form and were planning to harm someone, a devotee, and they threw a Shila and killed them. And then as a result, because it was a Govardhan Shila, they gained liberation, they gained a transcendental form. And then they were speaking to this devotee who had just, thrown the Shila. And they said, "Thank you, you have liberated me from this ghastly form. My sins have been eradicated." And he says, "How did you get in this form?" And he tells his whole story about all the different things that he did. But because of the grace of Krishna, the soul, as it's explained in our Shastras, the soul is never touched by any of these material circumstances, these material contaminations, these thoughts or actions, nothing. It's fully transcendental, always pure. And so we can always love the soul of that person and we deal with the externals. But in that pastime, being liberated in such a way, the Vaikuntha airship came down to take them back to the spiritual world, even though they hadn't done such seemingly like atrocious things on the external platform. The soul stays pure. And when it was brought out of that condition, it was fit to go back into the spiritual world in fully eternal blissful love, never holding that previous actions against them. So this is the love of Krishna. We are all a part of it. Satji, Bhaktaji, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Hare Krishna, thank you very much for today. There is something that I don't understand it fully yet, still, is that the soul doesn't affect any, it doesn't touch the soul. Whatever we go through, whatever it's happened to us, the soul doesn't, nothing happened to the soul, that I can understand. But the way our experience, why then this experience, like karma, like whatever you have done, it's almost like in Islam also, hand for a hand, eye for an eye, and so on. It's almost like that. So karma is almost like that, right? It's because previous action, whatever I have done, it will happen to me now. So if soul doesn't feel or doesn't get affected by it, so what does then what is then this affect then, if not the soul, if not me, soul, or whatever I am? You know what I mean? I have difficulty to understand it yet. I don't get it really yet, because for me, when you pay something, it feels pain, it feels difficult, it feels heavy, it feels. What is it that, if not, why do I have to go through that, if not because the soul have to feel that? You know what I mean? Please help me to understand that. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful question, Selvi Devi. This might be a longer explanation, so I might be able to fully just to answer that to satisfaction, but I can speak 1-2 sentences toward that direction. That in the Gita, it explains that the soul can never be damaged by the fire, by the wind, by the air. It can never be hurt by any weapon. This is the nature of the soul itself. But as you mentioned, if I get hit, with fire, then I feel it burn. If I get hit with strong winds, I feel that experience. If I, swim in the water, that can hurt me. I can feel that. You can feel that. I can experience that. And that's really the point there, is that the material energy is so powerful. The 3 modes of material nature, the material elements, the apara prakriti. It's so powerful that it can allow us to believe that that is our full reality, which is part of the trick. It's part of the game of the material world, is that we want, the soul has somehow or other developed this desire to experience all of these things. What would it be like to be a celebrity? What would it be like to be a ruler? What would it be like to do this or to do that? According to those desires, they bring us to different scenarios. And in those different scenarios, we have different sets of experiences. Now, the karmic ruling, also I'll speak to Nityananda. He mentioned in the chat about a dream, which is also quite nice. That when we're in a dream and we're being chased by a tiger, we are believing that it's happening. But when we wake up, we realize that that wasn't actually what was happening. It's an illusion. It's something that we're experiencing as being real, but in actuality, was not actually affecting ourselves. But the thing about the material world is that it's not actually a dream. It's actually happening. We're here. This is real, but it's not a lasting reality. The real reality is that we're an eternal soul, and we can live in the eternal realm with the spiritual form of Krishna. But there's a second point I was going to mention. As far as karma, Krishna even speaks that the interactions and reactions of karma are very complex, very complex. But the system of ruling is here so that, well, for many reasons, one of which, so that we can learn that the relative world is not where we want to be, because the soul is ananda chinmaya vyasat. It is naturally pleasure seeking, and we can only find that pleasure in the eternal present world. So we're bound to not be fully satisfied with a temporary world. Karma keeps things just, they keep things balanced. So if there is a group of people who wants to derive pleasure in the mode of tamagun or rajagun, in the mode of passion or ignorance, deriving pleasure from hurting other people, then naturally there will be a karmic reaction, some kind of justice, so that influence doesn't pervade the entire universe. Because if that influence pervades the entire universe, then everybody is forced to suffer. Because either you're the one hurting or the one being hurt. But the universe has 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And happiness and goodness is through knowledge, clarity, balance, and a sense of relative happiness. So like this, so I keep seeing Nityananda's message come up, so it's kind of coming up my train of thought. That naturally there is a system of law and order, and the karma system keeps things in balance. And now it's described as if the universe is a yantra or a machine, which just distributes what we've input. I give the example that if you have a Metro card and you go on the subway and you have $2.59 in the Metro card, and the Metro station is $2.60 to go past, then it's a machine, it's a yantra. It's not going to be like, oh, you're just 1 cent under, that's okay, you come along. That'll be like, that's not insufficient. But that's why we're also confused by that, because we're people, we're souls, and we're expecting that kind of understanding. And that's when we interact with another person. We're like, oh yeah, that's just anything, yeah, you have no problem. Which they may not, but Krishna is just wanting our best benefit, which is why he's saying, oh, you're like, you have $2.59, you have $0, you have negative $1 million. That's fine. You confide in me, I'll take care of everything. No problem. Forget the problem. I'll take care of everything. Just allow me. Just allow me. And that's the main thing that we want to focus on, is the grace of Krishna, the kindness of Krishna, the sweetness of Krishna. That whether I understand how this world works or not, whether I'm qualified, whether I have baggages of unlimited negative karma or baggages of unlimited good karma, doesn't matter. Because Krishna is willing to intervene in our life and to bring us to a transcendental platform far greater than everything that we could have possibly conceived of. This is the love of Sri Krishna. This is our goal in Bhakti Yoga, to avail ourselves of the love of Krishna. So you have your hand raised, maybe you have a follow-up question.
Yes, I have a follow-up question here. Thank you for your answer. When you talk about just, for instance, I will give you an example. A person thrown out in the jail, this person doesn't know why. He or she just thrown in the jail, and in the jail, this person goes through many problems without knowing why I'm here, why I'm in here. Doesn't remember anything that this person have done and so on. So how can a person who had gone through that thinking it's a just? It's a just. So when I come out, when the person come out, the person doesn't need to be afraid of the police or of the judge or of the law person. You know what I mean? Of authority. Doesn't need to be afraid. When the person knows that it has been treating without knowing why, treating to that extent of situation, how can I see it as a just, when I understand that I have heard many times, yes, because if you knew what you have done before, then I have heard that, I know that, I understand that, but still, in this situation, it's difficult. There's a difficulty to understand the justice in it when there is nothing I can remember, or maybe somehow, because Krishna wants me to trust him, to believe in his love, and so on and so on. At the same time, I don't understand the whole situation I have gone through. I don't get it. I don't understand it. You know what I mean? So my difficulty is not to understanding the justice in something that I don't remember what. Mm-hmm. How can I see the justice in it? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because when a criminal have killed someone, the criminal knows that they have done it, so they will be thrown in jail. So they understand. They don't think that is unjust. You know what I mean? This is my difficulty to understand. Please help me to understand. Thank you.
Yes, a very good point. This is why, similarly, Maharaj Parikshit inquires from Shukadeva Goswami in the Srimad Bhagavatam in between the 5th and 6th canto, end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th. He's hearing about these reactions in between lifetimes. And it's saying that they get the negative reaction, and it's supposed to be a process of atonement. Maharaj Parikshit questions, this doesn't seem like it uproots the problem itself. They still have the desire to do the thing that got them in trouble in the first place, whether they remember it or not. So I don't know if this is really a great process of atonement. Shukadeva Goswami says, yes, very good. The real process of atonement is confiding in Krishna. If we understand that Krishna is the source and controller and the well-wisher and best friend of every living entity, then we will be able to be peaceful. Be able to be peaceful. We will be peace from all the distresses of the relative world, because we'll have full faith in someone and something sublime. Someone that we can trust, someone that we know is looking for our best interests, someone that we know who loves us, someone who can distribute things very precise, like a parent. And we can have faith or not that they are doing that in our best interest. But still, the fact of the matter is that the loving parent is only just giving that from a place of love. Now, that's for those of us who are confiding in Krishna, right? But you mentioned two different examples. How do I, as a bhakta, know that Krishna is giving this to me as an act of love? If I'm really confiding in Krishna, then that's an opportunity for me to go deeper in faith. And we should do as we're doing now, inquiring and studying more and seeing how Krishna is present like this, asking him himself, confiding through the different processes of bhakti yoga. And if we're not confiding in Krishna, it means we're confiding in the material energy. The material energy has a ruling system where, for example, now we see people in the world, and we may ask, it seems like they're so successful, but they're doing terrible things. How is it that bad people are getting away without getting the reaction for it? Or otherwise, how is it that good people are getting bad reactions? But it's like we're watching 3 seconds in a 3-hour feature-length film. And so if we're only seeing those 3 seconds, we won't have the full context of what's going on in the whole story. So for the moment the soul enters into the material world, it's accumulating these karmic reactions. And it may not get the reactions for all of it in one lifetime. So when I go into the next lifetime, I can get that lifetime and all of these backgrounds based on what I did in my previous life. And so whether I remember it or not, you're still, like, say, for example, someone kills somebody and forgets, has amnesia. Still, the cops are going to see the evidence and he's going to get the reaction. Surely it does make more sense if it's going to more directly address the negative behavior and try to facilitate that, to rectify that, to remove the negative behavior that one has done. If they know, like, okay, this is what I did, and then like now I need to correct myself. Certainly it makes more sense. But if we're talking about karma, which is just like the raw accounting, this happens, so the material universe, the system will give you this. You chose this flavor of ice cream, so it will dispense this flavor of ice cream. It's more mechanical. It's more direct. So whether we remember it or not, still the reaction for it will come through. So if somebody killed somebody and then got amnesia and didn't remember it, still the cops are going to say, okay, well, you killed this person, you have to go to jail. And you say, well, why? I don't remember doing that. He's like, well, whether you remember it or not, you did. So with like this, the material world works on this system. And thus, as the verse was saying today, that we're kind of carried along to experience the reactions of these different things. Now, while he's in prison, he can have a full, reformation of heart, and then he can become a very nice person, and he can feel genuine remorse for his behaviors, and then he can make up for it. Like the verse was saying with being on the plane, they can behave differently, and that will give them new karmic reactions. But the thing with karma is that it will cycle us again and again, and just highs and lows perpetually, nitya baddha, continually being conditioned. Which is why it says that in Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami says that the real atonement is being able to transcend these things by confiding in Krishna. And the best way for us to do that in this age is chanting his names deeply and attentively and with affection. Then we transcend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Unless we have any other questions or comments. Nityananda Prabhu, you had some nice points. Maybe you want to speak. Otherwise, that'd be Hari Prabhu.
Thank you, Manohara Prabhu. The reciters, Annabelle, Isaiah, Sage, please unmute yourself and chant as loud as you can.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Thank you. This is my favorite part of the class, Manohara Prabhu.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much.
They stole the show.
Hey, that was the best.
Happy Saturday. Hare Krishna.